grateful for the community. We're grateful for the citizens that live here. Father, we're grateful for the rain that you have brought us. Father, we continue to ask that you guide us as we make decisions. We pray that we will make the decisions that will be best for the citizens of Canyon, Texas. Father, we ask for your protection on the staff and the first responders that work in Canyon. And Father, again, we are just grateful for giving us such a great community. We ask these things in your name.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that takes us to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of August 1st, 2022.
Mayor, since I was here last time, I looked over the minutes and no changes. Second.
Have a motion second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right. Item number 5, public comment. Comments from interested citizens. And Gretchen, I think we have folks that signed in, but on specific items. Is that right? And we'll go ahead.
I believe that's correct, unless somebody just wanted to speak during public comment. But I think everybody was either 6 or 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Then that takes us to item number 6, to consider and take appropriate action on number 1 Dandridge property. And we do have, I think, 3 folks that have signed in here. But I think want to know if each of you, we have Rodolfo Morales, Colby Monroe, and Davey Hamilton. So if you want, we can go ahead and visit and call you up. If you all want to, there's some chairs up here if you'd like to come up front. Have a seat up there too.
Got some information.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I should have made a few more copies because I didn't realize how many people there were. This will just make it a little easier on the things that I wanted to go over. Sorry. So you probably
Checking out on each chair.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll look on good.
Thank you, guys.
So I guess we've got Danny, you're probably, or Joe, or you taking the lead on this?
Well, I can. Unless Colby wants to go ahead and just start out, so I think we all know why he's here. But so the basic nuts and bolts is we have a house at 1 Dandridge built into a existing utility easement, and so the current parameters of the utility easement are 40 feet in diameter. And the water line in that easement is 20-inch, one of the bigger size lines that we have in town. And that line is directly fed, Dan, if I'm correct, from the water tower, the northern elevated storage.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're here to address. As a reference of code, obviously you cannot build structures or accessory buildings within the utility easement, and in fact our code does prevent in the rear part of the lot building up to 10 feet of that. So technically if it was a 40-foot easement, it'd have to be another 10 feet from that. Staff is working with the developer on that initiative right now across the entire subdivision, and that's going to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We believe that at the staff level at this time, obviously it's not our decision, believes limiting that on these, especially these cul-de-sac properties, is definitely something we need to do, and Davey Hamilton and his group has taken initiative in working with staff on that. We're not all the way through that yet, but there is support from the staff level to forego that additional 10 feet. So in hindsight, that would mean they could build up to the easement. But we're still working on that. So that's kind of just the nutshell of where we're at. On the easement, the house is boarded in, and so it is on standstill at this point in time until this issue is resolved. There has, not to throw, there has been several misses on both sides, city and builder. And we discussed some of that. We missed some things on the inspection side, on the easement side, on our side for sure. No one's disagreeing with that. And so we're here to try to find solutions with that. And I know Colby is wanted to address the entire commission on this topic. Colby, did I miss anything?
No, thank you.
Obviously, this is a very big deal at this point in time.
Cody, you want to take it from there?
Sure, yeah, I appreciate everybody's time. I'm going to try to make it quick. I know my folder here, you're probably looking at it thinking we're going to be here all night, but I promise I'll spend a lot longer putting it together than it'll take to go over it. My name's Colby Monroe. I own 2911 homes. We also have a few other businesses in town. Most of you guys probably know me or what we do. We've got a few restaurants in town. You know, I'm a huge advocate for Canyon. I've invested millions and millions of dollars into Canyon. I love Canyon. I think one of the points I wanted to start off with is a lot of these builders are going outside the city limits to build. I'm not. I think right now I have around 20 or 21 open permits in the city limits. So I like you guys. We're on the same team. I've got a great rapport with my guys down at Planning and Development. We have a good relationship. They know I like to do things right. This is one of those items that, like Joe said, we're partially to blame on both sides, in my opinion. And I'll take my fault for the things that we did wrong in this. So, like Joe said, the property is located at 1 Danridge in Spring Canyon. It does show a 40-foot easement. My guy that draws my plans drew up our site plan at 30 feet. I do have that in here. We'll pull that out here in a little bit so you can see it. Turn that into the city, got a red line stamped approved set of plans at 30 feet. So that was, in my opinion, where the city went wrong, where 2911 homes went wrong. The way these houses are positioned on the cul-de-sacs, they're not just squared up with the street, they're in there kind of at an angle. We moved the house to the left a little bit to account for the culvert, because there's certain specifications on these culverts that I won't bore everybody with. We just felt like the driveway wasn't going to work, so we scooted it to the left, and when we did that, we unintentionally scooted it back, which pushed us another 7 feet. So right now we're actually 23 feet in easement. We're 17 feet inside the easement. So that's the issue. So a few of these things on here, discuss past communication. I'm not going to bore everybody with reading all this. I mainly put this in there so commission I would know for sure you guys had copies on everything. There could be some emails that I wasn't included in, but some of the emails that I was included in, I didn't see everybody's name on there. So I wanted to make sure that everyone had all these. So March 23rd, this is the first little set of that I put in this paper clip. I kind of kept it in 2 sections here. Basically, we sent a letter to the city to propose me getting it back to the 30 feet that was approved. And it sounds like there might have been a little bit of miscommunication here, where I believe the city thought what the engineer proposed for me to do to make it safe was where it sits. And where it sits, it's less than 2 feet from that line, somewhere between 18 inches and 24 inches. So my proposal was, let me, quote, remodel the house, take 7 feet off of it, and then I'll let Rodolfo speak on what the proposal was for the engineering, but basically put piers in to address the safety concern if that line were to ever rupture, and also accessibility to fix the line. So we felt like 8 feet was kind of our target goal. And where I came up with that, I'll show you here in a few, is kind of based off the floor plan. Anything more than 7 feet, the floor plan doesn't allow. It takes too much off of it to make the house work at all, and then it becomes a complete tear down. And so that's the biggest issue for me. I mean, that would bankrupt the company if we had to completely tear down the house. So yeah, I put all these letters in here because that way, if anybody wanted to later, they could read these. We proposed that on March 23rd, March 29th. I had sent that to Craig and Danny. They replied just saying you can't be within the 40-foot easement. And then April the 20th is when I received a letter from Joe just saying you guys need to let us know what your plans are and how quick you can get this house taken down. And then I had my lawyer send a letter which Chuck replied to as well. So that kind of catches us up on the past communication. Most of those items I saw at City Commission was attached in the email. It was just the first few before it got to Chuck that I didn't see everybody's name on. So my main point today is, like I said, not to throw stones, not to try to get anybody in trouble or stir the pot. It's just I want to present our solution on how we can handle this. Maybe both sides take credit for what went wrong. I think this is probably what variances were created for. It's not something that we've ever used or plan to use in the future, but it's a fix that could help both sides. So if you don't mind going over the...
Yeah, basically the fix that I came up with was anchoring the corner that's closest to that line. Whenever I first went out there and looked at it, I was under the impression that we were 8 feet from that line. I think it came out that we're a little bit closer than that. But still, Kobe's still proposing to, back the house or remodel the house, if you will, to get to that 8 foot where I made my recommendations for the fixes. And basically, the fixes are going to be a set of helical piles on that corner attached to the foundation. It'll hold the house in place if there ever is a rupture we're dealing with it. It'll keep it from flying up in there, if you will.
And you've done this solution before?
No, not this one. What we've done before, I was telling Kobe this too, we've bridged over it, basically encased the line, and I don't think that's an option here, because that's going to limit access to that line. But we have, over pavement, we have bridged over main, things like that. Yeah. But I'm confident that this solution here, anchoring that corner of the house, will hold the house in place.
Kind of an engineer, are you?
I'm a professional engineer. My degree's in civil engineering, but my background's structural.
So on the right-hand side, that second set that was paper clipped together, I had put in here a few drawings. His letter goes over all that, but he summarized it well, so we don't need to read that. But on the second page where it's got green and professional green and pink marker on it, I just wanted to show if I was able to take the 7 feet off, I could basically lose this master closet and have my architect figure out a way to add another closet on the outside of the master suite so that it would still have a closet, but if I went to the 17 feet to get it to 40, I lose a corner off both the bedrooms and the whole master bathroom. So at that point, it just becomes a complete demo.
Kobe, would you look like is there any way to extend on that side of the house, maybe to the side of the yard, an additional foundation to make that room a little more extensive? Have you had a chance to think about that?
As far as adding a closet back?
Yeah, on that side. And I know it looked awkward, obviously.
Yeah, it would. To be honest, it's something I wanted to let the architect design, but I didn't want to spend the money and waste his time if we couldn't agree that, hey, if we can get this to the 8 feet, we have an engineer that's come up with a plan on how to address the life safety issue, and then talk about the variance, and then we could present the floor plan, because I think the floor plan is going to need to be detailed in how we're going to put the footing in, tie it in together, put the piers in, reframe it. So as Joe said, the house has been drywalled, it's dried in, it has windows, it's boarded up, roof is done. We're about 30 to 45 days from completion once we get ready to move. So we've been on it for a while. It's been a year now, and we've been kind of kicking the can down the road for 6 or 7 months here, and I've been paying interest on it the whole time. So it would be great to get a compromise figured out. I'm willing to compromise.
What are you thinking on the liability?
So liability here is the very last page on that right-hand side. And we could change the wording on this if Chuck wanted us to. Basically just, I will disclose to the buyer the issue and the variance. And then I basically had them draw up I don't know what you would call it, I'm not a lawyer, but a hold harmless agreement that would address that whole 2911 in the city of Canyon and the, I guess, utility contractor. I'm not sure what they're called. Harmless from anything that could happen. So they just full disclosure. Just be open and honest with whoever buys it. And I do have 2 potential couples that are just kind of waiting on me to get this figured out, because I'll just laying all my cards out. I'll have to discount the house, get them to agree to it and understand what's going on, get it sold and keep moving. So that's our proposed solution: is take 7 feet off. I would hire WTX Foundation to install the piers that Rodolfo specified. If we could agree on the variance, and then we could dispose everything and have them sign some kind of agreement to address the liability piece for the city and myself.
Have we potholed that line to know exactly where the edge is, not just the middle of the pipe?
Yes, it's like Colby said, it's 18 to 24 inches from the corner. Is that correct?
Well, we know the exact edge of the pipe.
Yes. Yes. Crew looked at it.
It's a side note. I do think you guys might consider for long-term marking that pipe along both streets, because if a homeowner decides to put a pool in or something years down the road in their yard, because that is all a yard. You know, we're allowed to put the fence and include that all in the yard. So I just get worried if someone goes to build another. I guess if they built a permanent structure, they'd have to pull a permit, and I guess a pool too, but it might help it not happen again if we could clearly mark it. So, and then the very last item I had on there was just putting a dollar amount on it. Probably cost me around $50,000 to remodel this thing in a way where we could get back to that 30 feet that was approved. 17 feet, we just have to full demo it, remove the slab. I probably wouldn't build it back, but I'd be out the $300,000 that we just don't have. So I think my proposal is the best thing, to not spend tax dollars on, arguing about it for another year. Does anybody have any commissioners have any questions for me I'd like to answer?
So are you willing to pay the $50,000?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna eat the cost to get it back to what was approved. I think that's a fair trade. 30 was approved, I'll get it back to 30. We've addressed the life safety, so you learn lessons in business. Sometimes it costs you. This is a tough one, because if we can't do the 7 feet, then it knocks us out. And we love Canyon. We want to see Canyon grow. We want to keep building houses, but it's gotten so tough to make a profit off these things since COVID, and it's gotten complicated. So,
a question for Danny. Danny, how did it get turned in at 30 feet? How did that happen?
Well, like he mentioned, Zachary, his designer, submitted that plan at the 30-foot easement versus the 40-foot easement that was dedicated. We missed it on our plan review and approved it. And then, to make matters worse, when they went and laid out their foundation, they moved an additional 7 feet into the easement, and we missed that on our inspection too, so, like Kobe mentioned and Joe was mentioning, there was misses on both sides.
It just wasn't on the plat that submitted, so.
I'm sorry?
It was not on the plat submitted, plan and zoning.
The plat shows a 40-foot easement. However, their site plan their designer turned in showing it to be a 30-foot easement.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't verify that during like we should have during the plan review, so that was missed on the plan review. And that was the permit was issued. So there was some miss at the design as well as review on our side, and then like I say, then they laid out the foundation that didn't match the site plan that was turned in, so we missed out on the inspection. So it took a team effort to get to where we are today.
I know that, David.
Does this create, Chuck, I don't know if you're familiar enough with title law, but does this create title issues?
Well, I mean, it may affect marketability of the property if you record a covenant running with land. No, the hold harmless, I mean, potentially we're liable if that line blows out and creates a sinkhole and the house falls down into it. Absent the hold harmless, we're potentially liable if we allow that house to remain in the easement. So what Kobe has suggested is a hold harmless agreement and disclosure of the waiver of variance, to prevent that from being asserted against the city in the future on a tort claim of some kind. And so that's what we're talking about. Kobe's got a better handle on whether or not the property is marketable. He's indicated he's got a couple of potential buyers, even with full disclosure of the variance. So I mean, he's a better judge whether or not that would affect the marketability of the property than I am. From a legal standpoint, we're gonna have to do a lot of wordsmithing on the indemnity and hold harmless agreement, and make sure it's binding on the subsequent landowner.
Velco, have you dug into the design now?
A little bit, yes. I think the solution they're proposing, I forget how deep they're proposed to go with the beautiful piles, but ultimately the concern is if that line breaks and it creates a sinkhole, I don't know if the pile will support the house if it undermines the foundation. I think being outside of the easement is, as city engineer, our number one goal is to protect the health and safety of the public. If it's to stay outside the easement, and that's the bare minimum. Beyond that, it might still have an issue, but at least then you've met the minimum, and the city's not liable. But I think that 20-inch line just poses a risk in general. We have looked at a solution like this of casing the line, but that's expensive and possibly more dangerous to the existing line. So knowing that they do want to cut back the house helps some if they'll be outside of the easement. I think ultimately it's your decision if that's enough on the city liability of being outside the easement or change it to a 30-foot easement instead of 40. So I think ultimately it'll still be 10 feet inside the actual 40-foot easement. So that's the risk you're running.
Yeah, no, these helical piles they're torque driven, and as far as the depth, just want to see what's your torque, but I find it's going to be more than 15 feet. I would say 15 feet minimum depth is what but probably getting closer to 20, 25 feet on each of those.
That they will be that deep?
Yeah, it just depending on what the conditions of those clays are or how stiff they are at the time, the moisture in them. But typically in this area, minimum 15 feet before they give the proper torque. Like I said, I suspect 20 to 25 feet will be more.
What's the life expectancy of that line? I wouldn't know more than 50 years. When was the last time we've had a 20-inch main bust?
Well, we only have like the 1 and 2, but we had an 8-inch bust 2 months ago, and before that, how long ago was that one bust on?
Worked around here at the intersection.
Yeah. It happens, lines break.
Sure it does.
even those 8-inch lines, they was pretty catastrophic, so.
My name's Davey Hamilton, I'm here with the Spring Canyon and Candy Up, who you may not know me. But we just feel like this is I'm just here to support the builder. We just feel like this is a situation would definitely fit for a variance, and that's what we're asking for. So, you know, with mistakes on both sides, we just feel like this is the best thing, rather than just tear the house down.
So does this kick this back to the variance board, or does it go to variance and then come back to us?
So I don't think this would go to the ZBA or to the PNC.
This, this is, you're asking about the zoning board of adjustment, and the answer is it would not come back to the city commission if it was a zoning board of adjustment issue. This is an encroachment on an easement, so it's probably not a ZBA issue.
Oh, it'd be city commission.
It'd be a commission issue, it wouldn't be a ZBA issue.
An ordinance variance.
So the commission would just have to make a decision if you're gonna allow this to remain on the easement. That, potentially could present a health and safety problem. I mean, the remodel, it appears, may be something you want to consider. But, this is just gonna be a commission decision, it's not an analysis.
I got two motions to make, can we make them better?
You're welcome to, may I do this?
This one first. Scobie's willing to put in $50,000, make a motion that the city pays up to $250,000, demo of all the building, and he'll pay the rest, and he starts all over.
The issue I have with that,
The motion, that's why it should be a second.
oh yeah, wait a minute a second.
Say that motion. Make the motion that the city puts in up to $250,000 to demo the house, and probably put the other 50 up, $300,000 estimate. And be back to where it was and start over. Comments and everything, they just like start moving out.
Is there a second to that motion?
Sorry, Paul, didn't mean to interrupt you.
If there's not a second to that motion, then that motion will die for lack of a second. So you have a second?
I'm making a motion that we go with his variance and give him the variance and just put the 50,000 up to move it to 7 feet. Whatever y'all want for it.
Chuck, do we have to draft an ordinance to do that variance? Can you?
I think it can be done by resolution, if the commission would adopt a resolution to set out the parameters of the variance.
It would be best that comes back for a vote.
I believe so. I believe we ought to go to the point of drafting the resolution and presenting it back to the commission, so everybody agrees on the wording of the resolution. This is gonna have a long-term effect.
No, I agree, it needs to be worded correctly.
So do we need to go ahead and have a motion to move that direction then, or do we,
Paul made a motion.
Better if they want to do it.
I'm gonna second the motion so we can have further discussion,
okay.
because otherwise we can't talk.
All right, have a motion and a second, to, approve the $50,000, expenditures
With the
and
7 foot.
modification with the 7-foot, move back, and acceptance of that by the city with those improvements to the property. Is there any further discussion?
Yes. This is directed towards staff. Is there any information, whether public or executive session related, that might be pertinent to us making this decision?
Other than us digging in a little more, I think we've said mostly what we said. It's pretty clear that there's been some miscommunication, formally and informally.
I think Colby and I had a long discussion, over an hour discussion about that last week, where we both, Ms. Martin, myself included. And so we haven't really talked about that much, but Colby and I did talk at length last week about trying to get this, and I highly encourage Jim to come speak today to you guys all at once. Other than that, I haven't had a whole lot of chance to talk to Adolfo and Dan just briefly about it. At the end of the day, staff doesn't want to tear the house down. However, this is kind of foreign territory, you know, at the end of the day, so it's foreign. The one thing on the legal side, you know, typically governmental duties, which was governed here, is typically not a liable obligation in our governmental functions. We do have liability on the enterprise system with the water and sewer system. That's why we carry a sewer rider all the time when we do flood with sewer all the time to have claims, and we have those pretty regularly, do we not, Gretchen?
Yes, sir.
For that liability aspect. So those are two things to be mentioned on the liability side. Chuck, any more?
Well, there's a governmental immunity issue right there, and there's a damage cap under the Tort Claims Act, and it does get brought under the Tort Claims Act at $100,000.
Yeah, on that side.
I mean, there's a damage cap involved, so this may be something you want to hear more about in executive session before you take a vote.
And Cody, if two engineers disagree, I don't want to be a couple more engineers.
Get a jury of engineers.
Yeah, and there was some miscommunication. It was clear, and Colby mentioned that earlier, that we had some miscommunication on that.
So we want to get it done in a timely manner.
Agreed.
Obviously paying interest on
Yep.
what's borrowed.
We 100% agree.
This is just a layman's question. So I'm hearing, Rodolfo, that you're saying that I'm reading in here, talks about the plate and those being embedded 5 feet into the ground, but you're saying 15 to 25
Well, that's a minimum. Basically, it's a calculation of the diameter times 5 or whatever. It just depends. But like I said, ultimately, whenever they get installed, there's a head on there that reads how much torque. It really, you know, you've got proper embedment once you reach a certain torque. And I mean, you go south of Canyon, you just keep driving and driving because that clay is so soft. By the high school, I mean, you're going 40, 50 feet. Out here where he's placed, I'm guessing he's probably going to be around 20 to 25 feet before he gets proper torque.
You know, I'm just trying to envision what that would look like if
It's
you know,
all
there
about
was
soil
a
conditions.
break
Yeah.
and what it's tied
And
into.
it's just like, I guess the manufacturers typically claim like, you know, embedment must be 5 times whatever the plate diameter, like on a 12-inch plate diameter, you know, they say that'll be 5 feet. But like I said, it just depends on what the soil conditions are.
Another thought, I would think that we could go ahead and vote to move forward, but still, with just putting this together, but still go back in exec session and still visit about it at that point.
There's not much more to be said. I mean, if you want to go back to the exec session, I think we aired everything out. And so,
Do we want to wait until we get the final legal wording before we make a final?
I mean, we do think if we do move, I think it'd be nice to have y'all saying, hey, we want to move this direction, and that's what y'all offer up. And then Chuck and I can work on that together to bring a formal resolution to memorialize it, because it needs to be memorialized for everyone. We cannot do it on the fly, just impractical.
We need some time to draft it.
Right.
Can we put it on a time frame though?
Yeah, I mean, we're ready to move forward immediately. So we will move as fast as you want us to. We know this is an impending issue to get done immediately. We would be willing to sit down this week with Colby and his crew to start working those details out as soon as possible.
So may we have a motion on the table?
We did, so we have a motion and a second.
Colby second.
Mayor Pro Tem seconded.
So you've heard a lot of other discussion. Is there anything else y'all want to add? There's been some other things thrown out there. Is there still about where you are?
Okay. Thank you.
The only thing I would add is that, I mean, if you do add onto the side of the house, Colby, you might need a side variance on the side. You don't think it'll be too close to you on that side yard?
It's going to be tricky. I think we can do it in a way where we'll.
3 feet, Danny? 5 feet.
I see what you're saying.
I just don't want us to have to come back.
I see what you're saying.
That's
Could we
all.
deal with the side variance in the same issue?
That would be ideal, David.
Rather than go to the planning and zoning?
That's why I'm bringing it up. Yes, we could do that. Danny, would you agree?
Yeah, I think if we all get on the same page and we agree with, engineering's always been a concern. I mean, we talked about 7 to 8 feet back, and Dolphin had concerns with it being 7 to 8 foot back. Were those piers going to be able to hold up to undermine? Now, I think we get to the point where everybody agrees that we can have some reasonable comfort levels with moving back to that 30 feet, installing the piers. Then they can come up with a design, Colby can present a design, and if need be, we can take it. I think we can take it to the zoning board of adjustment just to memorialize that, formalize that process.
On the side yard?
I think we need to also consider, are we gonna maintain that 40-foot easement in that area, or are we gonna reduce that easement to a 30-foot easement?
I don't think we're asking to set a precedence to go to 30, and I think that's been brought to everybody's attention. It can stay at 40, but it was just a mistake on both their parts.
And I mean just in that area, I'm not talking about the entire thing, just
to that lot.
Just to get that house out of an easement, maybe reduce that easement, that area. That's a question for Dan and Adolfo, if they're comfortable with that.
Well, I would say typically, don't do that, but just say, okay, if you ever remove, if the house is ever destroyed by voluntary act or casualty, they can't be rebuilt over the easement.
Yeah, substantial damage.
Just leave it as a 40 if it remains, but it cannot be rebuilt if it's ever destroyed or damaged for some reason, to the extent it has to be removed. It cannot be rebuilt in that location.
I mean, if we're gonna deal with one easement, I don't know why we would send it back to the ZBA for that. I mean, no, that sounds really silly. To me, I just think we should deal with both of them. Memorialize it in one action, as opposed to sending them back to us.
That should speed it up for us.
I'm okay with that. We just don't want to limit Colby on his fix. We want it all done at once, to make sure it's addressed.
So you're talking about granting this, if there's potential less than 5-foot side yard, the city commission would grant that variance?
Yes.
Well, I suspect that Kobe probably has enough confidence now that he could probably go with his architect and spend some money and bring us something that shows us that either is or is not the case. And if it is the case, it'll be addressed in the next meeting through memorialization.
Is there any further discussion?
Do you have any thoughts to that, Chuck? The zoning piece of it inside yard?
I'll talk to Danny about that later, but we'll make it streamlined as possible.
But just to clarify, you're talking about this body making that decision and not the zoning board of adjustments?
We need to double check that that's allowed.
Yeah, I'm just checking on that.
Yes.
It may not be allowed.
Yeah, that's my concern.
But we can obviously expedite that action as fast as possible, if that's the case.
Yeah, I'll check that out and get back to you.
So, Paul, do you want to amend your motion to state that you want us to move forward with creating a resolution?
I think that's what, okay.
He didn't say that because we talked about that after, so that's how you want to.
Joe, that's fine. Joe wants us, if we're gonna move forward, for us to approve.
I second that one too.
All right, so, the motion at hand then is to move forward, to allow the 50,000, in improvements, to move it back to that, 30-foot, easement, amount, to move forward with a resolution that Chuck would prepare, to do that, and accept that with those, the piers and safeguard segment, so.
One other thing, sorry, I am gonna get a surveyor to survey exactly where that thing's at, so that when I submit the plans, we'll, see what I'm saying?
Certain of that 30
I'll take
foot.
another step and make sure I get to that 30 feet.
The only thing that's not been addressed is the whole harmless liability aspect, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'll encourage that to be a part of this.
Are you good with that being part of the Okay, with that, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Well, thank you all.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, that takes us to item number 7. To consider and take appropriate action on a plat for Country Acres Unit Number 1, a subdivision within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of King.
Mayor, this will be the easiest thing you guys look at all night. This is another extraterritorial jurisdiction plat. We have, as you guys are aware, we have authority to grant to approve plats within our ETJ. What makes us a little different is, can you zoom on that just a little bit?
Where? The corner?
At the bottom. Yeah, perfect. Just scroll down just a tad. Okay, there you go, perfect. As you guys can see, that line across the city limits ETJ, you can see in Reynolds County. That what makes this a little interesting. This actually crosses over. A portion of this is inside our ETJ, a portion is outside of our ETJ. Okay. That bottom portion, you can't see it here, but that Cemetery Road down on the bottom of 87 is on here on the left-hand side or the west side. So the city has the authority to approve the lots to the north of that, those portions. So lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a portion of 5 are going to be outside of our ETJ. Okay. Lots 6, 7, and 8, just a little bit of the north portion of lot 5 are within our ETJ. So Chuck got with Richard Gorham, and they determined this would be a dual approval. They decided it would first present this to the city commission, and then once it's if approved by the city commission, to be taken to the Roanoke County Commissioners Court to take final action. So there's going to be dual approval and dual signatures on here. I think the Roanoke County meets next Tuesday, so if it's approved here, hopefully Jesse with OJD Engineering in here, hopefully they can get it to them in time. But it's just a little bit unusual plat with it being a split decision, but there are no public improvements. It does have frontage on Cemetery Road, as you can see on Highway 7. There are some shared access, such as little box, you see the 40-foot by 40-foot shared access. They've got this all approved by TxDOT. Yes. Drainage study has been approved. So P&Z met last week and they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the plan. Yeah, I'll be glad to answer your questions. And Jesse is here as well. If you got any questions for him.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the plat for Country Acres Unit Number 1.
All right, have a motion second to approve the plat. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 8 is to consider and take appropriate action on ordinance number 1163. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Canyon, Texas, approving the negotiated settlement between the Executive Committee of Cities served by Atmos West Texas and Atmos Energy Corp. West Texas Division regarding the company's 2022 rate review mechanism filing, declaring existing rates to be unreasonable, adopting tariffs that reflect rate adjustments consistent with negotiated settlement, finding rates to be set by the attached settlement tariffs to be just and reasonable and in public interest, approving an attachment establishing a benchmark for pensions and retiree medical benefits, approving an attachment regarding amortization of regulatory liability, requiring the company to reimburse cities reasonable rate-making expenses, determining that this ordinance was passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, adopting the savings clause, declaring an effective date, and requiring delivery of this ordinance to the company and the city's legal counsel. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the reasons I wanted to become a city manager, is rate cases. This is a rate review mechanism, rate case. Just to remind everybody, the city commission, the city has original rate-making jurisdiction within the corporate limits of community, and that is exactly what this is doing. Atmos had requested originally in late December a system-wide $8.77 million. As you are well aware, we do team up with all of our other West Texas city, and you can see that in the memo, Atmos West Texas, and ultimately what they do is to get together to either, we voted to suspend at that time while our rate attorneys looked over everything, and ultimately in this case negotiated a settlement. And so that settlement from 8.77 million went down to approximately 6.72 million plus. And if you want to see the bill breakdown, on average, it's an increase of approximately $3.36 per month on bills. But you can see the breakdowns all the way through the ordinance and the memo of exactly where they are.
Well, it's our usual process. I don't know. It seems like we do this for every rate case. So.
We got the cell right behind this one.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve ordinance 1163.
Second. Got a motion second to approve ordinance number 1163. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the ordinance, signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes. All right, thank you. Takes us to item number 9, to consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 2022, a resolution of the City of Canyon, Texas, denying Southwestern Public Services Company proposed surcharge in connection with final rates approved related to its statement of intent submitted on about February 8, 2021, authorizing the city's continued participation with other cities in the Alliance of XL Municipalities and participation in related rate proceedings, authorizing the hiring of attorneys and consultants, requiring reimbursement of reasonable legal and consultant expense, finding that the meeting complies with the Open Meetings Act, making other findings and provisions relating to the subject. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is dealing with Southwestern Public Service Company, also formerly known as Excel Energy. At this point, we actually have had several calls on this case. Ultimately, we're AXM, that's the Alliance of Excel Municipalities, and I'm directly on this body representing our organization. Right now, we're at a standstill on this, and we're requesting a denial on this proposed rate increase, the surcharge, and ultimately this will be passed along to Public Utility Commissions of Texas for revision. And you can see the breakdown. I go over as much as little as you want me to, but you can see the breakdown right to the beginning of the summary, all their rating numbers. Increase is about $144.4 million.
It's a rare event. Point is that Joe usually
Sometimes it is, yeah, but.
Work it out. So
Yeah.
obviously there's a wide difference in opinion.
I think the surcharge calculates out to about 88.9 million total. And they want to implement a balloon cap, but I think we're at a standstill overall on this. Move to adopt resolution number 2022, 2022.
So move that we adopt resolution number 20-2022 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and second to adopt the resolution. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the resolution, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right, takes us to item number 10. Consider and take appropriate action on development funding report, Reese and Nichols, and authorizing the city manager to move forward with the development and release of a request for qualifications related to professional services for the review and updating of the city's infrastructure systems needs for expansion and funding options. John, looks like we've got you presenting this, and let me ask right quick first. We have, I think, about 4 folks that have signed in to speak. That we don't typically have a lot of folks speaking, and we want to do this. Does it matter when we have them speak?
No, so we just allow them to speak.
Okay, all right. Well, why don't we go ahead and we'll do that here in just a minute.
Okay, now Joe and I will be tag teaming on this. Joe's going to be jumping in. As y'all remember, 2 meetings ago, Dan Semko and Chance Sparks came from Friesen Nichols and made a presentation, which is attached, the development funding report, which is attached to your, in your packet. Thank you. We went through that. They discussed the highlights of that, and you all had asked that you had some time to read through that and discuss that. We were gonna bring that back up at the next meeting. We had a commissioner that was not able to attend the next meeting. We wanted everyone to be involved with that, and everyone wanted to be able to weigh in on that discussion and that vote. So we postponed that to this meeting. So at this point in time, we're coming forward with the same recommended motion. There is an addition to that motion, Joe. Is that what you need to bring?
We can mention the Parkland dedication ordinance if we want to bring that out. We've talked about that. It's in our comp plan as well. So this would fit in line with this. Just to be clear, not everything in here is impact fee related. It's looking at everything from PID policy to residential development tiers to our planning framework. So it looks at everything, not just capital covering these. So, but we did want to throw Parkland out as well because it is encompassed in these categories as well if we want to do that. We did not include that here. I know John's done some homework. I have not been as up to speed on some of that, but we did want to mention that as well if we wanted to include that. Just as a reminder, this report, development funding report, was an amendment to our current project with Friesen Nichols, where we've done the subdivision regulation and zoning update. And so this was actually defined in our strategic plan to move forward and look at, as well as our comprehensive plan. So we have 2 of our guiding documents that has this report in it. So,
And it is another funding, and impact fees is one of the other funding mechanisms. And the other things that we're going to look at involved with funding mechanisms are mentioned in our downtown master plan. When you all see that one comes forward to you all, it has various funding sources, and at least 2 or 3 of these funding methods that we would look at are included in that downtown master plan. So the documents coming forward to us are suggesting that these are various methods of funding.
we did send this report out to the same list that Danny sent out as a listserv for everybody to look at. And Gabe, I know we wanted a little bit extra time last time to look at.
And we did have some user groups that participated in that, is that correct?
Yes, we do. We have some user groups. Obviously, we always want as many as we can get. But I wish it would have been a little bit more. But yes, we did have some input. There were some good just suggestions thrown out.
Why don't we go ahead and take some of the commission discussion first, and questions, and then we do have 4 folks that have signed up to speak.
Probably better to switch that. Let them speak first.
Okay. Okay, if we do that, Gay Burke, would you like to come up and speak first? And we'll, what we do is allow 3 minutes for discussion, and if you would get up and tell us your name and your address, please.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'd prefer to go at least at the end of it, or reserve my time for after I hear the commission's commentaries on it, because I'm more on the learning curve of it at the moment.
Do we have anybody who'd like to go ahead and speak first? So, thank you.
I'll go first. Davey Hamilton, 10554 FM 359, represent Spring Canyon and Canyon Couple Group, myself. I think the report is fine to have the study, and Joe, appreciate your time and effort on it. I know you and John put a lot of time and a lot of work in on it, but I just want to go on record saying I'm not for impact fees, and that's why I'm here right now. Okay, you guys have seen all the growth between here and Canyon. I've heard many times that the city of Canyon wants to grow by 100 houses a year. We can sustain that. The problem is that I see is we're going by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of homes in the Canyon area, the rural area, outside the ETJ. So if you only want to grow by 100 homes, we're going to limit ourselves. You're going to limit Canyon the growth. You're going to slow the growth, and that's effectively what we're doing in implementing impact fees. The other thing is, I think everybody on this board consider themselves fiscally conservative. We're voting for something. I don't know if we're voting for the impact fees yet. We're voting for the study. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're voting to just go out for consultants to do it.
Okay. Study is fine, but I do want to go on record. I'm not for the impact fees because that's just going to slow the growth down even more, in my opinion. Okay. Our lots are ultimately going to get more expensive. You're going to be passed on to the builder. Kobe's got issues with that. Hard enough to sell lots, hard enough to sell homes right now in this environment, and our lots are just going to get more and more expensive to do that. Ultimately, probably doesn't affect me other than maybe slow my business down on the development side of things, but it's just going to be passed to the consumer. So if we want to slow things down, we want to slow the growth down, then pass it. I think that's my stance on it.
Your suggestion to having system expansion projects.
I don't envy your position. It's not an easy position to figure out how to fund them. I just don't think impact fees are going to help the development speed up the process. I think they're going to slow it down. I personally think a general obligation bond is a better way to go about it. Out in the general public, if we, I don't know what you guys, long term, if you guys, any of these people or relatives have residential rental property or developments or things like that, or commercial property that you lease out, you got to buy the property first, and then you can make your return over 10, 15, 20, 30 years. You don't get to go out there and impact fee, somebody paid for it for you up front. That's essentially what impact fees do. They pay for it up front rather than long term. So another thing to consider, the council, is you've got, without calling those guys out specifically, you got a developer working right outside the ETJ, 1 mile outside the ETJ, building 1,100 homes. He may or may not have come to the city council asking to talk to you guys or work with the city. That probably did. But the problem with that is,
30 seconds.
okay, problem with that is you've got developers willing to set up their own MUDs, municipal utility districts, and PIDs and things like that, and they're bypassing you guys right outside your back door. So if you guys, you're just limiting yourself, what I said. Thanks for your time.
Cody, would you like to speak now?
Yes, my name's Cody Monroe. My address is 6111 West Country Club Road, Canyon, Texas. I also wanted to speak directly about the impact fees. I agree with Davey. Do the study, kind of see what it is, maybe come up with a number. I think that number really determines my opinion on it. You know, even if someone were to say it's only, you know, $2,000 a lot or $3,000 a lot, whatever, I don't know what the magic number is, but for me as the builder, as I stated earlier, it's gotten so hard to make a profit on these things. Where I somewhat disagree with Davey respectfully is I don't think it just gets passed on to the consumer. From a builder standpoint, I believe that you can only sell your house for a certain price based off lots of different things that appraisers take into account. So for me, I think there's the potential. I'm already over $200 a foot on a spec house. So if homes are appraising, you know, the market is slowing. We are seeing that. So as the market slows, right, prices are going to come down a little bit as that demand comes down. So at over $200 a foot, I'm just barely squeezing out a profit as it is. So for me, it's just another thing to make it more expensive and more complicated for me to make money. So for me, if we're going to add, you know, by the time we do, you know, we pay $55,000 for a lot, we spend tons of money on a pad based off sea level elevations, and we put in these expensive $6,000 culverts and backflow preventers on our water lines. I mean, it just adds up. And so to me, it's just another $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 cost that I've got to figure out how I'm going to work that into my cost so that I can sell it for a competitive price against my competitors. So that's why I don't agree with the impact fee portion of it. But like everybody else, I don't have an answer for it. You know, I don't do that for a living. But for me, it will sway my decision on if I should keep building homes in the city limits or not. Thank you.
All right, JT Larry.
So I'm representing the Builders Association, but I also live in Canyon. I own several rentals. One of the things that I wanted to point out to y'all is in subsection 4.05, you'll make a reference to $10,000 per dwelling. So if you're estimating 100 permits a year, it's $1 million extra in those impact fees. One of the things that people don't realize is we, as the Builders Association, have never been asked to be in these groups. Your engineering firm does not see that we matter. I'll just let y'all know that as a commissioner. And the TARs, the PIDs, all of those things are great in the aspect that they're long-term payments. Impact fees are a one-time fee. Keep in mind that when you do impact fees, it starts making people move other directions. So just to throw that out there, WT, you'll get a different impact fee because you're commercial. A and B, you'll get something else because that's going to be more than just your $10,000 fee. It's going to be close to 50 or 60. So when do you want these commercial businesses to go? Your restaurants, they're probably not going to start coming in because they have more money in other areas that can make more money. There are ways to make money. I know that this is not the subject line that we're doing, but subject number 11 is coming up. You're doing a reduction in tax. Not sure exactly why we've done 5 reductions in taxes over the last 8 years, mainly because if we're running out of money, we're lowering tax revenue when we could be using that to be funding our infrastructure. It's just a thought process. I know that the city can only increase a certain amount each year, but we keep reducing, so we keep cutting our throats, especially in a year that the home values are up. But I do want to ask the question in that 4.05, it says some developers were asked. We've polled pretty much every developer in Canyon, and we didn't get a yes on that. So I was just curious which developers were asked. I know that the builders
We had a
association
list,
was.
we had a list of invitees of people that build in Canyon.
Okay.
Builders Association does not build any homes in Canyon, so we did not invite the Builders Association.
Okay, but we represent the builders.
We invited the local builders.
Okay.
And we had a meeting with builders, and then we had a meeting with folks that do subdivisions.
Okay.
And then we had a meeting of invited realtors.
Okay, so I'm a realtor, also represent the Builders Association. and
We
was not accepted.
invited those into, we're in Canyon.
I'm in Canyon. I live in Canyon. Spend millions of dollars a year in Canyon. But
We come over to individual.
yeah, I think it's just how the commissioner looks at the Builders Association as not welcome.
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead. 3 minutes.
You're already on a roll. Yeah, actually, no. I was code enforcement and myself, Danny Cornelius, myself and I. So there was no one that had a plan to uninvite you. We invited those people that do the most work. Specifically, my question to Danny was, who does the most work in Canyon? And we invited those people. We invited a plethora of individuals. Most of them did not appear to come. They didn't choose to come. Hamilton's came to a meeting. They came to a very small meeting because that's all the developers that chose to attend that meeting. We put that notification out. We were very clear. We sent that directly to individuals' emails, and they just chose not to come to that. And that's why we.
In hindsight, staff was uninvolved in any and all of those conversations
Correct.
to allow open discussion.
We attended none of those meetings. There were no staff members in any meeting. So there was no plan to cut anybody out.
All right. So Gabe, if you heard enough, you ready to come speak right quick?
Yeah, I'll try not to reiterate. Commissioner Brian Gabriel Irving, I live at 6326 Cayley Drive in Amarillo. I'm a commercial real estate broker with Gott & Wittenberg Commercial Real Estate. I've done it for 24 years now. We're addressing a lot of similar scenarios in the city of Amarillo right now too, and we've dealt with consultants that I'll say I never felt like they were listening to the crowd, to put it simply. It seemed like many times we had guys that would stand up, the same thing, starting with developers and contractors and realtors, going through the motions, and I attended all the meetings, but I could never seem to find the thread when we saw the tail end, discussion of it. So I would definitely ask that y'all make an effort, a strong effort, to make sure that the Builders Association and these other groups that are represented are, that there's plenty of follow through to, your constituents, requests and opinions. I will say that yes, it is. Regarding the impact fees, again, like the others, I'm against it, but because of it, I don't want it to stifle the growth of the city of Canyon. I think with WT here, I want to see the city grow. I think there's a good mindset around here to do so, but I would definitely think that there should be a better long-term focus. We've heard that some of these water and sewer lines can last 50 years. That's a payback of a water line or sewer line, so be it. I would even consider, if y'all were looking at making the investment, the houses are going to be there a lot longer, the dwellings that are being built are going to be a lot longer than that, and you would benefit in the long run. Yes, it's a long-term payback, but it would be worth pursuing those avenues. And I'm not a fan of raising taxes, but I understand rationale to not cut taxes too. I would definitely tell you that I have seen a humongous surge outside of the city limits because of the cost of doing business in the cities. So the things that you all as commissioners can do to mitigate, slow down, or stop that increased cost and headache to these developers and builders, well, that's just going to fuel the growth. Yes, you're going to regain it in property taxes, but then you're going to regain it in commerce, bringing any other business that produces sales tax into the equation, in addition to, of course, sales taxes that are generated from the construction materials and things like that. So I would suggest that you do make it up on a numbers game, and request that even. How do we, come upon this not in a way that would fee everyone to death and push them away, but in a manner of how do we, edge it over 100 houses becoming 200 houses to be built, in the next year or two. So, I'm sure there's more commentary as I learn more, but that's my first blush. Thank you all.
Joey, do you want to speak to this?
Absolutely. On the taxes and the rate setting, it's been pretty clear from the commission to have a modest tax rate. I think that's been pretty clear. The commission has, even for the last 5 to 6 years, tried to keep a modest rate with raising appraisal values. Our appraisals have nearly doubled in less than 10 years. Looking back on 2016, it was approximately 600 million, and now is over 1.05 billion. A lot of that is due to this growth. So, however, it is very clear on the trend from commissioners here and before y'all that this commission wanted a conservative, modest tax rate approach. At that point, looking at the numbers, if we do want to do system expansion, the only real major thing I can see on the books that we've done system expansion-wise was upgrading the lift station at golf course. We increased that lift station size to help. It was by happenstance we were running the water line that we just talked about from the north tank to have some redundancy. To have some redundancy, which ultimately helped benefit Madison Park and things on the 25. However, I believe looking back on the intents of those commissions, it wasn't 100% intended for growth. However, growth did benefit from that, as well as we did system-wide. On the rough guess right now, looking at our capital improvement plan and running some numbers, we're about, if we want to do system expansion, those numbers are about $39.5 million at this point in time. And so those can be hedged back and forth, but that's what we currently have right now, is about $39.5 million in capital. On the rate side of things, I do feel that the commission has an understanding or thought process that our water rates are at a fairly higher level. And so the opposite side of trying to fund projects would be to put it on the ratepayers, either via tax or via water and sewer rates. To raise it. Or, roads for the tax, and then water sewer. Or, as y'all well aware, we do use our revenue that we have over and above and beyond to help supplement keeping the tax rates low. So there is two mechanisms there. As a reminder, it's my understanding that Chapter 395 obviously does not make a full recovery of those fees, the impact fee law. That law has been around for 20 years, and so that we are, if we go that route, we would be late to that. We are one of the later ones to that. The reason a lot of the cities in the Metroplex area had to do those was in order to keep up with the growth rate. It was unsustainable to try to keep up in order to have more and more density. In essence, economies of scale, density is what we all want at the end of the day. Staff, everybody, that's what people want. You make more money off it. So those are the full spectrums from here to there. Going over the numbers this afternoon with Danny, in approximately fiscal year 18, we had 4,008 rooftops. Not commercial, just rooftops. In 4 years, we have increased that by 10%. We have done over 405 homes in 10 years. So we've increased in 4 years by 10%. Just to give you some kind of numbers. And so at this point, we're getting close to either running out of utility space capacity at this point. We don't do something, and I'm not advocating on impact fees, but I'm just saying something needs to be done. We need to either take out an investment, COs, GOs, to help pay for that. And so I know where Joel is, we'll argue our bottom line. Our current debt service payment is approximately $2.3 million annually. So we are paying currently annual budget $2.3 million in debt service, which doesn't include the cap, I believe. Does that include the cap?
Non-tax supported.
Non-tax supported. So that doesn't include our tax supported, our one tax supported debt cap. Most of that's utilities. So that should give you a picture. Staff would recommend moving forward with the motion as presented in the memo.
not the implementation of impact
Nope.
fees. It's clearly a study to look at those and make a determination.
To acquire a consultant at this point. And from Freeze and Nichols, it would be a 12-month project at this point, whoever gets that. And then that fee's not set until the very end. If any, Lubbock didn't even set a fee. They set their fees at $0 when Lubbock Impact had installed theirs. They were set at $0.
You know, I'll throw out at the risk of not being a popular statement, but I think we've got to look at all the alternatives. I mean, I don't think, we've got a conservative commission here. I don't think our current residents want to increase their taxes, go out and say, we're going to go do $20 million worth of infrastructure that we talked about going out east and pay for it out of taxes. I don't think there's any way you're going to get that. You put that up for election, I think that, you know, that's going to be a death knell to go that direction. So, you know, we've got to figure out ways to pay for that. So I think you know, you can look at it as impact fees as a way to kill development, or I think you can look at impact fees, you know, PIDs, pro rata, all as tools of how we're going to get there. Otherwise, I don't think we get there. I think we're just going to completely shut down development if we don't come up with some answers. And so I think this is one tool in the toolbox, and I know Commissioner Lyons is concerned that, okay, we do a $3,000 impact fee that, okay, commission 5 years from now, I'll take that to 10 or 15. I don't know. In conservative opinion, I think, I'd like to think that future commissions would be wise about that. And I think we're also talking about impact fees, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but you know, applying to future developments. So current developments that were out there, we're not looking to change the rules, and so our current environment's not going to change. So this is just going to be a tool for future and how to get there. If some other lands, you know, which we haven't been able to, we basically looked east, we looked west and said we don't have dollars. And so it's just kind of a stalemate. And so I think this is one potential tool along with these other tools, and I think it's a piece that could fit with the Section 4, some of the city land, and also the Kim Road too. That's just part of the cost structure of it, and developer would have to know that that's a piece of the cost. And this may not be, you know, all using it. It may be pro rata, it may be, you know, PID or so. It's a tool.
They can be negotiated.
Trying to get us there.
Development agreements too. They can be negotiated.
So I guess bottom line is, I'm not hearing anybody coming up with any answers. We've had folks want to bring land in and annex it, and we're basically too bad, you know, and you know, we paid for Spring Canyon happened because we took funds out of you know, our reserves and surplus, and now we're down to a bare minimum on reserves. We've been aggressive in developing, and I think we need to do some of that and needed to be kick-started. You know what, I take that back, Dave. Really, it's only the school that's on that. It's really more Madison Park that there was the potential because of that to do so. And we've got other developments up there that can benefit from that. But we had reserves earlier too. That was an answer. That's an answer that's gone away. We don't have that piece of the equation anymore. So I don't know. We've got to figure out answers, I think, is bottom line. And I think, you know, this is looking at several different tools. That's just one tool in the toolbox. So.
My turn?
Oh, it's your turn.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. He answered the one question. He's exactly right about talking about the other commissions and the future commissions. Because it is says here, it's a development. We'll move forward with the development. Once it's in place, it's in place. Future commissions can do whatever they want. And first of all, I'll say this is, you know, we voted to hire a Freeze back then, and we hired them a year ago. I told them they're going to come back with impact fees. They did exactly what they did. So before we these commissions state, they're going to keep pushing their impact fees. And I've been working on Cody for 5.5 years. And been working on the mayor for so long, I think I'm part of his family. read a little statement for you two, and hopefully y'all will think about it a little bit. Y'all made some good points, especially a good point over there about your sales tax, real estate taxes, and all that stuff. That was a very good point made over there. All right, I'll just read this so I don't get in too much trouble with it. Impact fees are one of the worst things we can do for Canton. We're not Lubbock or Emerald. We're a small community. We need to take each development on a case-by-case situation. Once they have impact fees, then the next thing is the park fee. They already bring that up. I thought they'd be a little bit longer before we take that. These fees are nothing but a tax on our citizens. Impact fees will eliminate small business investment, small builders, and small developers. They cannot afford this added tax. The very people we should be trying to help will be the ones to be hurting. Only the big developers will be able to handle them. It's already hard enough to develop a Canton as it is. We have a broken system. Can't get anything improved in a timely manner. It's our fault because we allow it. Did you know if someone wants a nice custom home built in the city of Canton with all city utilities, there's not one lot available for them. But to add more on top of this would do nothing but harm. So I ask that you vote this down. We need to work with each development and come to agreement on how to do it. It needs to be a partnership. We did it with Robbie Christie, and he is big enough to help pay for it, and it seems to be working good. This is a way to do it, not by taxing everyone to death. It is just common sense. We're a small city that should take care of our small businesses. Thank you.
I teach a management class, and in that class we talk a lot about making decisions. How do you make the best decision? The best decision comes from the most information, I think. And I think to make the right decision, you have to get everything you possibly can. I think you have to pull in from everything you possibly can to make the right decision. This motion is not to pass impact fees. We're just exploring it a little bit more and trying to get more information. And I think it's smart on our part to try to get a little bit more information.
I agree with Randy. I think we have to do our due diligence to the city to get all the information to make the best decision. So I agree with him.
My reluctance comes from an odd place, and I just don't think it's a good time to be spending money like that. We're in the middle of, well, I mean, I guess it depends on if you're looking nationally or state politicians, but some would say we're in the middle of a recession based on evidence. Government money should not be spent outside of the government area in the middle of a recession. We talked about this when we talked about, unfortunately, a little disagreement here in raising taxes, which is exactly what we are fixing to do. If we vote in approval of this budget, we are going to raise taxes. I don't care up or down tax rate. More money is coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. That has to go back somewhere where it benefits the community. And man, we've got a lot of studies out. It's just another study. It's expensive. I'm not sure, that I'm 100% convinced. I'll be real honest with you, probably because I was misinformed, but I thought we would get more information out of the first study, besides, hey, we need impact fees. I thought, having two studies to come up with a number is a little ludicrous for me. That's 2 years worth of waiting for that, or a year and a half, a year and, I don't know, how long was the study? Was it 2? It ended up being 2 years, right?
We'll need a year for this next one.
So, it is somewhat frustrating, and so that makes me very leery. And just to be frank, anybody that lives in Canyon right now, somebody else paid for our development. And it was another taxpayer. And it may not be fair, or whatever you want to call it, but, my first couple of houses in Canyon, somebody else paid for that infrastructure. And it wasn't me, it wasn't my builder, it wasn't my developer, and the world didn't fall down. And, I don't know, it's You know, there's a lot of debate about that. You know, maybe we don't have infrastructure enough so it slows down, or maybe we do impact fees so it slows down. But at the end of the day, I don't think the sky's gonna fall if we don't go out and study this tomorrow.
How much does this study cost?
Oh, we don't know yet.
How much is budgeted for the study?
220.
That's more than what we raise taxes for.
I can figure it out though.
Y'all get to set the fees at the end of the day.
Well, that's not a huge selling point, to be honest with you. You know, Lubbock goes through the whole process of spending $220,000 and they set the fees at zero. Well, that doesn't make me want to rush into that. That makes me go,
They had to do a road.
Right, and they're moving forward with those. They're gonna incrementally, they're gonna start moving in that direction because they needed a road. They needed a road to get to that subdivision that had a dirt road. And that's basically why that's what went down that road. And that was led by the Lubbock Home Builders Association that led that charge. That's in the paper. That was a member of the planning and zoning.
Fred, you talked about you didn't pay for the infrastructure. But development's getting bigger and bigger all the time. I don't think we can keep up. We don't do something. And I'm with the mayor. What's the answer? We're gonna have to do something. You're saying we can keep the status quo. I don't think we can keep status.
well, I don't think the status quo's been hurting us, just to be frank. And it
Well,
looks
if
like
we can't afford to do more infrastructure.
And it looks like so far, most of the developers have been willing to when pushed, to do their part.
I listened to you.
So very good.
Will you read it again?
If you want me to.
No, please don't.
Yeah, please don't.
I'll be curious
We've
before,
in the last
I'll be
2
curious,
years.
there'll be
Yeah.
a partnership with the city of Canyon to put in the 680 lot development partnership. Did you not hear that?
Yeah.
Well, let it soak in. They don't know how to impact fee. You go do an impact fee on them, you wouldn't have done it.
You know, I look at it as pro-development to move down this road, because I don't think we're gonna put in, infrastructure for developments until we come up with some answers. I think bottom line, we're not gonna ask taxpayers to do a bond and then pay for it without some answers, if it's, and there are others, the builders can participate pro rata, and we can do some pro rata too. But I think a piece of it could be that, okay, voters, we're going in and doing this bond issue, but, you guys are gonna be on the hook some, but impact fees are gonna help pay for some of that bond issue too. So, I think we're at a stalemate where we're not gonna see development out there unless we come up with some answers. So, and we're not gonna ask the taxpayers to pay for it. I'm not.
And I hear what Cody's saying about the not spending the money, and I somewhat agree, but when is gonna be the right time, I mean, next year's probably gonna be worse financially for everyone than this year is. The year after that, probably the same. So I don't know, when do you do it?
No matter what, we're gonna have to take out debt to do some of this, impact fee or not. I mean, debt is coming, and we're gonna have to harbor that debt even without impact fees. Hypothetically, if we went to the east side of Canyon, we're gonna have to take debt out to build a water tower or lift station. We're gonna have to take debt no matter what, without any guarantee that anything will be built out there. Obviously, it's gonna be strategic to build it somewhere where we know homes will be built, but we are going to have to take debt out no matter what we do, impact fee or not, pro rata fees or not, tiers fees or not. We'll have to do that. We're coming to that impasse.
How is that funded, Joe?
Right now, it's if we can fit it into the annual debt service. And we're kind of tapped on that. That's that 2.3 million I mentioned that we pay annually.
Does that go back to general obligation bonds or what?
Or COs.
COs.
Yeah, which is on the enterprise, the water sewer side of that. So,
we really don't have capacity to go in and do that under the current tax structure. So, yeah, you could take some down to voters, but I'm pretty sure voters are not gonna vote, for a future expansion. They might for a police station. I don't think they're going to for a future expansion of racing taxes.
See, the next time we have an opportunity is in, our next payment that comes off is February of 2025. We'll have some free capacity to do about 400 to 450,000 debt service a year, which is, Joel and I, 10 to 12 million in debt maybe.
Depends on what interest rates are at the time.
We've been thinking, trying to do Texas Water Development Board money on that to get the lower interest rate plan. That would be our.
Whether they vote for it or not, majority of people live paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford to vote for, increases in anything, really. Property taxes, debt, I think. And there's a cost of doing business.
And that would, what we're looking at right now in 2025, early thoughts would be expansion to the wastewater plant of approximately 4 to 5 million, and then looking out on probably some of section 4 of the water tower and ground storage tank. But that's what we've early looked at. That's probably about all of the million.
Well, makes for some lively discussion. And you know what? I think it's some good discourse too. I mean, we need to get some ideas out on the table, and at this point, that's part of what we're struggling with, is to come up with some ideas. And what is pro-development? How do we get it done?
Do we think increasing the water rates and sewer rates on our current citizens, can we extend that capacity?
Is that gonna be enough?
Depends on what we do. I agree to some extent, it's case by case, like Paul said. We've studied north, east, south, and west now. What we think is developable land. It's hard, obviously, with our floodplains to do that.
Is there any further discussion?
I just have one question. So the new commissioners, we did a study, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. Have you had a chance to read that past study? Just, if you haven't, it's a very interesting study that they spent money on. I think y'all should look at it if you haven't looked at the past development study, so that you understand what you might be getting for $200,000. I just want y'all, if you've never seen the study, please look at it and see what it is.
Who did the study?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure who did the study.
I
When y'all-
think that we probably out of
Okay.
order. I mean, Paul, you want to bring it out?
If it's specific to impact fees, reading it, anyone could do. The chair of the economics department at OU, his name is Gregory Burge, B-U-R-G-E. He's done significant studies and research in this area. So anyone that's interested in reading that would be, he has good information there. Not anecdotal, but research based from across the country.
Well, again, I'm gonna stand by what I said earlier. I think, Cody, I see where you're coming from about spending more money, but this is a touchy subject, and I think we know information we can get. So I'm gonna move the authorize city manager to go across and move forward.
Just a second.
Have a motion second to move forward with the RFQ. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion passes 3-2. All right. Well, thank you all, and do appreciate the interest in the room today. I think we've got folks that I don't think anybody's arguing against development. It's how do we get there. So. All right. That now takes us to item number 11. Conduct public hearing and consider take appropriate action on ordinance number 1162, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Kenyon, Texas, fixing the ad valorem tax rate and providing for the levying of ad valorem taxes for the use and support of the municipal government of the City of Kenyon, Texas, for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023, at the rate of 0.400160 per $100, and for directing the assessment thereof, providing for a date on which such taxes become due and delinquent together with penalties and interest thereon, providing for repealing, saving, and severability clause, providing for an effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the publication of the caption hereof. Joe? Go ahead, Joe.
I gave you all a handout, this one-page handout. I'm going to be referencing that some as we go through this. This wasn't in your packet. It's just a summary of what we saw last time in one of the handouts we gave with the approval of the budget. So just to kind of recap what we're doing here is to approve the tax rate that supports the budget that you approved at the last meeting, the August 1st meeting. So this tax rate will generate what we estimate for budgeted revenue in that budget to be $3.8 million. That's broken down between general maintenance operation and debt service INS, $3.6 million for maintenance operation, and $258,000 for debt service. As has been discussed some in some of the other agenda items, this is an increase of tax revenue of $287,000 over last year. This is an 8% increase in tax revenue. And just to kind of recap how we got here, we talked about the increase in valuations. We looked at valuations for 2 years ago. Those were 68 million. This year, for tax year 2022, valuations have increased to 141 million. So that's a 209 million increase over that 2-year period. We can see how much significantly more those valuations were this year over last year. Therefore, we have proposed a lower tax rate so that we're only increasing tax revenue by this $287,000. This is a significant decrease over the years in the tax rate. I've also provided to you that same handout that I gave you in the last meeting, where we looked at the certified values and the budgeted property tax revenue and the tax rate. And so we've been decreasing that tax rate steadily over the years because of the increased valuation. However, each year we've had an increase in the tax revenues each year. So the tax rate that we're proposing to go with that budget is 0.40016. And with the documents that we get from the appraisal district, they do provide us with the average resident homestead property within our tax base. And at that rate, this rate would be an increase of $932. I'm sorry, $932 total on those, which would be a 13% increase
on the average valuation. That won't be true of everyone. You know, it could be higher, it could be lower, it could be about the same for some. Just to remind you, we have 3 rates that are calculated in the tax worksheet that we are to calculate tax rates based on legislation. The no new revenue rate, which is the inverse relationship of the valuation and the tax rate. And so this proposed rate is higher than that no new revenue rate. And we've provided that disclosure as you make this motion, this recommended motion. We are providing the language there that's required by the legislation to document that this rate is higher than that no new revenue rate. It is also higher than the voter approval rate, but it's below the rate that voters can petition for an election. And it's also below the calculated, what's called the de minimis rate, which if we set it that high, it's an automatic election. So we're below the rate that would result in an election. This is a 2-part motion and a record vote, which you can do after the public hearing, but we need to have the public hearing first. 2 parts that will need to be voted on is the maintenance operation part, .37350, and the debt service part, which is the .02666. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Definitely appreciate all y'all's hard work. And I love just the transparency of not trying to hide behind tax rate going down junk and just speaking plain truth to the citizens. This is where we're at. We need this money. Here's what we need the money for. Here's where your taxes are going to go. Come to the open meetings and talk to us about it. Here we go. I value that type of communication with the public.
The first year in the tiers is going to be approximately $7,500. So that's right there in the agenda. Just y'all are curious about that. That is a little bit higher than what was anticipated in our conservative estimates.
Just to remind you where that comes from, the base valuation of the tiers was the 2021 tax year. So any valuation that increases over that 2021 valuation, tax revenue on that increase is what goes into the tiers. So that $7,500 estimate will be this tax rate applied to that $2 million increase in the properties in that tiers property in that zone.
All right.
As a reminder,
Any other?
the sales tax portion, just so y'all know, we have a sales tax reduction portion for property tax. If you were to put that into a property tax rate, it is 12 cents this year.
So the voter approval rate prior to the sales tax adjustment would have been 0.5076.
So it's that significant.
The sales tax adjustment to that brings it down to 0.3837. It does have a significant impact, and that's based on actual sales tax collections over the past 12 months.
All right. Well, if we're ready to move forward, we need 2 separate motions. What's that?
Public hearing.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So we will open the public hearing.
Mayor J.T. Larimore has signed it.
Okay.
So just have one question. I know you lowered the tax rate, and I know the taxes are going up. Question I have is, have we looked at a way of not changing the tax rate? I understand tax rates, that means the money just going in would be more. Is there a way that we can use that to fund our deficits and anything else? I'm just asking in general terms, like, can we use those tax dollars towards a waste management savings fund, or not necessarily, I know it's not a large enough amount to pay for a new waste treatment plant today, but is there a way to do it like in a savings fund or a, I know that's a weird question, but I don't know the answer.
Just so you know, JT, our water sewer system makes so much money.
Mhm.
We actually use some of that revenue over and above and beyond to supplement the general fund. Pretty common in West
Mhm.
Texas. So we're taking that, putting it over there, and it's 800, 900,000 a year. So there's that, so keep that in mind. Largely in part, the 287 this year, we are hiring 2 full-time firemen, 2 brand-new fire positions. Commission over the last 6 to 12 months have talked about increasing the fire department. Our ISO insurance rating, being real thorough, consumer, is dropping. And so, and largely because of staffing.
Yep.
And so, over the next 3 years, we're gonna try to do 2, 2, and 2.
Okay.
And so, that's one big piece of it. The other part is 3% COLA and 3% merit for city staff. Those 3 items alone equal $486,000.
Right, but I'm saying like the effective rate is
Right.
dropping. If we kept the effective rate, that difference, we can't use it as a savings fund for future
If they
growth.
wanna set taxes higher,
You're saying if we kept the same tax rate, that difference?
Yeah, instead of doing a reduction, just
And
keeping that tax savings.
The city staff presented that it's pretty common, the commission knows when I bring the tax rate as for both those, it's gonna be the same rate as last year.
Okay.
However, that rate would have been. Yeah, it would have been more than the de minimis rate. It would have been an election.
Oh, okay,
roundabout, so
okay.
it
I was just curious.
It was a significant anomaly year because the 16% is where our values went up. And so, even if we had kept the same rate, it would have, where's the rate? Well, the election requires 0.42, and we're currently at what, Joel?
426 on any, so we would be in the area where a taxpayer could petition for an election.
Okay.
It wouldn't be an automatic election, but a taxpayer could petition for an election and put us in a potential.
I was on the understanding that it could stay at the rate and you couldn't petition or anything.
Not as long as values are going up.
Oh, okay.
That's what the legislature accomplished in that.
Okay. I think that's a good task.
legislation.
It's all really about the revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it increased.
It's all about
with-
the revenue.
With those two things coming together, the revenue increased so much
Okay.
that we couldn't stay there. In theory, if we stayed there, you're exactly right, then you would have
Some
additional revenue.
comments from the commission, and there were some disagreements, there's no doubt about that. But being that, like Kelsey said, costs are high right now, they felt that that would not be appropriate to leave the tax rate at what we proposed due to.
No, that makes sense with the chance of protest. We would probably get protest.
Do you have anything else, John?
No, sir, I did not. That was a good question.
Did you want to speak to our capital improvement program on that? That we do set aside money for?
Yeah, we are actively
As
setting
we run
aside
through.
money, and that's why this year's kind of a tough year. We're setting aside $1 million this year just for capital improvement projects. Out of our $23 million budget, we're doing $1 million this year, and actually, we're probably gonna get $2 million in grants to match that. So we're gonna get $2 million, most of that is infrastructure related, so. It was a hard year to get that and everything else, very hard. And all the development projects are in the capital improvement plan. They are in the plan. All development projects are in there.
I guess we actually need to close the public hearing, and then could entertain a motion.
Just one more point of discussion I think is interesting is the tax rate, the effective tax, let's go back to old school speaking. The effective tax rate increase is 5%, yet the increase from revenue is 8%, and that difference of that is new growth. So the entire increase in revenue is not necessarily on the back of the current rate pay.
I think it was 65.
65.
About 45.
Yeah.
Which is
35.
not the case in most cities.
Mr.
Mayor, I move that ordinance 1162, effectively increasing the property tax rate by the adoption of the tax rate for maintenance of operations of 0.373500 per 100 value, which is effectively a 5% increase in tax rate.
Second. Have a motion second to approve ordinance number 1162 for the M&S portion. M&O portion, excuse me, not INS. M&O portion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Excuse me, we need a record vote on this.
Correct.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Commissioner Lyon?
No.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes 4-1.
Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance 1162, adopting a tax rate for debt service of 0.026660 per 100 value given.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the INS portion of our tax rate, ordinance number 1162. Any further discussion? All, well, another record vote. Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Commissioner Lyon? Commissioner Ray?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-1. All right, thank you all, and as Mayor Pro Tem said, a lot of hard work, and appreciate it, and appreciate feeling good about the numbers too. So appreciate that, Joe. All right, with that, we're going to consider and take appropriate action on meeting dates for September 2022.
Mayor, we just wanted to propose with the Labor Day holiday falling on the 5th, which is our first meeting of September. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. That we meet only on the third Monday, so just one meeting. I would say.
Oh, we proposed 12. Was I wrong?
I got an invite for the 19th.
Could I say something?
Yes.
We've got due to some postings on our last P&Z meeting, I failed to get the notifications on the internet, so we had to cancel last Monday's meeting. We're gonna have a special P&Z meeting. It's coming Tuesday on the 23rd. We'd like to request that you guys meet as early as possible next month, so we get this, the Canyon East Unit number 10 zoning and plats being considered. It's by no means a slam dunk being considered on the 23rd. I'd like to have meetings early in September as possible to get these guys moving. Weather's going to become an issue if they're trying to pave and whatnot. So, what are you grinning about?
Mayor,
Are we
we'd like
sure?
to propose we meet on the 12th.
Are we saying the 12th then?
Yes. the
Or
12th.
that week of the 5th, later on that week.
I am out the 12th, so it doesn't.
There's probably a pretty good chance I won't be here that weekend.
The 12th. Would it be better the week of Labor Day?
What about Tuesday the 6th?
We'll make that work.
Here,
Danny, would Tuesday the 6th of September work for this?
That would work for my schedule.
This
yes, sir.
developer, this person?
Can you pencil us in, Danny?
Danny, do we have enough time to advertise and publish?
Yes.
Well, Commissioner Lyon said he would be out. Are you just out that day, Paul, or is it that? No, you're going that whole week.
Go ahead. Okay, yeah.
Either him or them.
Yeah, I'd see, because you're going.
So it sounds like we've got 2 going the next week though,
Yeah.
so you're good, Paul. Maybe that's not good.
No, that's good.
And then, since you've had back-to-back-to-back meetings, that's it for September. We'll meet again. If something comes up big, we can do
We
that.
still get paid our $25?
Yes. Yes.
Whoa, I didn't know our money was at stake here.
Yeah.
Your whole $25.
I'm not gonna go make my house payment.
Dealing, may I have to make a point of information, dealing with Mr. Monroe, who's in here, if we need to call a special meeting to take action on that either, obviously, if it's the 6th, you know, maybe, but if we get things lined out before then, is anybody opposed to a special meeting to taking action on that issue?
No, I prefer that. Sooner the better.
Cody? Mayor? Okay.
So the 19th is not happening, is that right?
The 6th, the 10th.
We're doing the 6th.
The 6th.
19th's not happening at this point.
At the normal time, correct.
All right, good deal. That takes us to item number 13, executive session pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberations on real property, and 551.074, personnel matters, city engineer. And with that, what time do we have here? 6:29, and we'll adjourn into executive session.
Ready?